In at number 10, Quentin Tarantino.
So it's my job to try and ask you to.
And I'm shutting your butt down.
And that's entirely your.
What a line! I'm shutting your butt down. Quentin Tarantino was having none of this interviewer's questions, but still tried to go along with it. He kept his cool for about 3 minutes before the gloves started to come off. The journalist's name is Krishnan Gurumurthy, and he has become notorious for asking celebrities the most awkward and really big questions about themselves, their past, and their work. Stuff that would be better suited for a 3-hour podcast or an episode of 60 Minutes. However, during these press junkets where they're only doing the interview to sell their film, it's hardly the place or time. In at number 9, Cara Delevingne. Let's just say her dry British humor was not really received by these happy-go-lucky morning news anchors at CBS Sacramento. At the start of the interview, she was asked some very dumb questions. For example, the film Paper Towns was based on a book, so they asked her if she had read the book, and then immediately after made a snide comment about her probably not having enough time to read. Cara obviously takes offense to this judging by her body language, but instead decides to flip it into a joke, saying that she didn't even read the script, just winged the whole thing. The interviewers actually take this as factual for a moment before her laughing finally cuts the tension. And that's not even the most awkward part of this interview though.
I think it probably is us. Well then on that note,
We figured as much.
We'll let you go then. How about that? We'll let you go take a little nap, maybe get a Red Bull. How about that?
After one interviewer asked her why she isn't as excited as her other interviews, she remarks that it's very early and that she thought it was going well, so again, jokingly she says it must be you. And the interviewer in the middle, like, oh my god, she sounded so bitter. That line of, well, we'll let you go take a little nap and have a Red Bull, how about that? Yes, how about that level of professional journalism? Good job, Good Morning Sacramento. In at number 8, Kourtney Kardashian. After her sister Kim was robbed in Paris, Today Extra, an Australian news outlet, was interviewing Kourtney via satellite from Los Angeles.
Okay.
They asked her how Kim was doing following this traumatic event, but suddenly Kourtney's face just freezes. You then can sort of hear what sounds like her publicist saying, "Do not answer that question."
Looks like Kourtney doesn't really want to go there with
I think
that
she's
question.
blanking me. I think she's totally blanking
I
on
think
that
there's
question.
probably a PR person there saying, you know, don't talk about it.
The interviewer then goes on a bit of a rant saying that she could simply say her sister is doing fine, as they too speculate that she was told to be quiet. However, she then does answer the question on her own, saying, "She's not doing great, I think we're all still shaken up." And her response to what appeared to be her blanking was that the audio from their end wasn't coming through. In at number 7, Jesse Eisenberg.
Do you know the comedian Carrot Top?
Yes. Horrible.
You were like the Carrot Top of interviewers. No, and it's a good thing. It's
I'm
a good
gonna
thing.
go cry now.
No, don't cry now.
While promoting the film Now You See Me, Jesse Eisenberg just could not contain his utter disdain for this interview. Right out of the gate, he was on the offensive. The interviewer refers to Morgan Freeman as simply Freeman, for which Jesse takes offense to, oddly enough. He then, as you saw, remarks she's the Carrot Top of interviewing, which insults the interviewer so bad that she hurries Jesse to complete a magic trick just so that they can wrap it up. And the entire interview is just one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen, and this is only number 7 on the list. Trust me though, if you haven't watched this full interview, you must. You must do it. It is just a terrible exchange back and forth between an actor and a vlogger, essentially. In at number 6, Samuel L. Jackson. When you are interviewing a celebrity as big as Samuel L. Jackson, it's imperative that you do your homework. You know, like learn his name. When Sam Jackson was promoting the RoboCop remake, he was asked about a recent Super Bowl commercial he did. Sam replies, "What Super Bowl commercial?" and then hits KTLA reporter Sam Rubin with this.
What Super Bowl commercial?
Oh, you know what? I've been my mistake.
See, you're as crazy as the people on Twitter.
Jackson then proceeds to say, "I'm not Lawrence Fishburne. We don't all look alike. We may be all black and famous, but we all don't look alike." And Rubin repeatedly apologizes for this very public faux pas, but the damage is done and this just got super awkward. Jackson doesn't let up though. He questions Sam Rubin, saying, "You're the entertainment reporter?" To make his point known, Samuel L. Jackson posted this image on Twitter of him wearing a t-shirt that says he's not Lawrence Fishburne, you know, just to avoid any further confusion. In at number 5, Jim Carrey. At the New York Fashion Week in 2017, Jim Carrey made a rare appearance, and while walking down the red carpet, he did his best to avoid an interview with E! News. At first he tried to kind of twirl around a few times and not really stand still hoping that that would work, but she was persistent. Carey then says he wanted to find the most meaningless event that he could go to, and that's how he ended up there. The interviewer, trying to keep the integrity of this event high, claims that it's a celebration of icons, for which Jim says, icons don't exist, I don't believe in personalities, I don't believe you exist, but there is a wonderful fragrance in the air. And before departing from this awkward interview, he leaves her with this little nugget of truth.
Is relevant, that's not that
Here's
uplifting.
the thing, it's not our world.
None
That's
of this
the
is
key.
real?
Nope.
So you're just passing
We don't
through.
matter.
In at number 4, Dakota Johnson. This without a doubt has to be the cringe heard around the world. We got to watch the live falling out between Dakota Johnson and her mother Melanie Griffith on the red carpet of the Oscars. Oh, the Oscars, please insert fake laughter here. Man, Hollywood is so fake. Just because the cameras are rolling, they fake laugh their way through this entirely awkward interview. And the whole thing started off on a really bad note. The interviewer praises Melanie while repeatedly calling Dakota her little girl, which she is, but it just downplays how successful she's been on her own. Then when her mother is asked if she's seen 50 Shades of Grey, her mom outright says that she wouldn't watch the movie, which clearly hurts her daughter regardless of the content and the positive reviews. A kid is always looking for that recognition from their parents. In at number 3, Robert Downey Jr. This guy again. You remember that interviewer from earlier that was just a little too pushing? Well, he's back again, but this time with RDJ. And didn't I tell you folks earlier that he was known for just having the worst interviewers? I mean, this guy should be questioning politicians, not actors about their upcoming movies. He goes way too deep with Robert Downey Jr. in this interview, to the point where Robert Downey Jr. just says, you know what, we're done here.
What are we doing?
Well, I'm just asking questions, that's all.
Right.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you guys.
Oof. That slapped so hard it felt like a movie. Speaking of slaps, when Downey stands up to leave, he gives Krishnan a very hard pat on the shoulder as if to say, good work, you dummy. The reason why he got so upset was because these questions virtually came out of left field. He went from asking him about superhero movies to Robert's, let's say, tumultuous past. In at number 2, Tom Hardy. If you thought that was hard to watch, just wait until you see this awkward interview with Tom Hardy. At the Toronto Film Festival during a press conference for his film Legend, he's asked by an LGBT news organization about his sexuality, claiming that while his character is upfront about it, Tom on the other hand has been much more ambiguous about his sexuality, which leads to this kind of terrible exchange. It's the epitome of awkwardness.
Are you asking me about my sexuality?
Sure.
Why?
Why?
Thank you.
Okay.
Why indeed. That thank you he gives at the end too, oof, I felt that. Last but not least, at our number 1 spot, Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld is one of the most successful comedians of all time. His show Seinfeld was on television for 9 years, and Jerry's decision to go out on top proved to be one of the most lucrative deals ever for this comedian. Since the final episode, the show has generated over $3 billion in repeat fees, but for whatever reason, Larry King thought they cancelled the show. Even though Larry King worked for CNN, he wasn't known for his hard-hitting questions, yet for whatever reason, he decided to use an interview promoting Jerry Seinfeld's B movie to ask him if Seinfeld had been cancelled.
Is this still CNN? I was the #1 show on television, Larry. Do you know who I am?
And you can see in Seinfeld's body language how frustrated he gets when Larry even tries to insinuate this. Jerry does not back down though and immediately goes on the attack, telling King that he was the #1 show on television before adding the very crass line of, do you know who I am? What's the deal with you not knowing who I am?
Number 10, Megan Fox. Megan has been featured in several films over the years, but it was an interview about her time working with Michael Bay on the set of the Transformers movies that canceled her career for good. The original live-action Transformers movie came out in 2007 and co-starred Megan and Shia LaBeouf in the leading roles. It was a fun movie on screen, but behind the scenes there was a ton of tension on set. According to Megan, who had previously worked with Michael on Bad Boys 2, working for Michael was like working for Schmittler. Fun fact, if you add sh to someone's name, you can say it online. Loophole. Of course, Michael didn't appreciate being compared to, you know, one of the worst men in human history, so many speculated that her being left out of third Transformers movie may have had something to do with behind-the-scenes drama. She went on to call him bland and claimed that he had no personality or social skills of any kind. Like, hey Megan, that's just a little bit harsh. It's a little personal. When the comments were made public, her career began to slowly suffer. Not only was she written out of the Transformers series, but she was forced to make a public apology and actually retract her statements following the massive slew of backlash from fans. She took a few years off, but Michael himself later acknowledged the misstep on Megan's part and not only accepted the retraction, but the pair were able to patch things up and work together on the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies from 2014. Yay! Number 9, Cara Delevingne. Cara is a gifted actor and overall seems like a solid human being. So much like the rest of us, she gets tired and annoyed from time to time. Unfortunately, that feeling took place on live TV while promoting her new movie, Paper Towns. While making an appearance on the early morning show, Good Day Sacramento, the interview did not get off to a great start. The program's anchor called her Carla, and she then spent the next few minutes trying to get info out of Cara, but was failing miserably. Falling deep into the anchor role, she pulled out the old, hey, wow, that's amazing. Hey, listen, Carla, did you read the book that this thing's based on, or did you even have time to read because you're so busy? She was having none of that. She was very sarcastic with each answer to the fairly generic questions. Do you relate to the character? What was your favorite moment? Blah, blah, blah. It was then that a third anchor abruptly popped in and asked Cara if she was exhausted, as she seemed a bit more excited to speak about the project a few weeks prior in London. She giggled and said, no, I'm fine. Apparently the premiere of the film was the night before, which she claimed to feel like the end of an era. But the anchors do not know when to quit. In fact, one of the anchors then suggested that she may be irritated, or maybe it was just them. They then cut the interview short and told her to take a nap and get a Red Bull. She can be heard saying, oh my god, too far, before the news anchor screeches over her and shuts her down. According to Cara, there was really no bad blood. She was just sick of answering the same questions over and over again. Following the interview, the man who popped up and gave his 2 cents was fired for causing such a tense situation on live TV. Number 8, Mike Tyson. Now, I had trouble landing on just one interview to mention when it comes to Mike. He's someone who seems to bounce back even after the most heinous of controversies, so we're just gonna run down through a few good ones. The first time Mike really hurt his career was in the late 80s, and it wasn't even something that he said. He was doing an interview with his then girlfriend Robin Gibbs when the topic of Mike's behavior came up. She said herself that Mike had an extremely volatile temper, and recently reports had surfaced of Mike getting loud and physical with her. Something she seemingly confirmed while Mike was just staring the interviewer down the entire time. Very intense. That was the first little notch on his belt, but as the years went by, more and more controversy came to light. During a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he lashed out at a fan in the crowd, hurling a slew of insults at him and calling them the British word for cancer sticks. It starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career even further into jeopardy than it already was. But he finally drove the nail into the coffin on CP24 breakfast television in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote when the interview took a hard left and went from, so what's the show about, to, so should you even be allowed on stage, you monster? That's not what he actually said, but that's what Mike heard. He stopped answering the questions honestly and he would instead hurl insults sarcastically. The F word is once again his favorite. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mike hasn't been on the news much since that day, and for very good reasons. Number 7, Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler's comments about the upcoming live-action Snow White remake could have a huge impact on ticket sales, according to branding experts. The 22-year-old actress has received plenty of backlash after she admitted that she hated the original 1937 movie and branded the storyline weird, while referring to the Prince character as just a straight up stalker. The backlash occurred after several videos of Rachel speaking negatively about the original film in various interviews last year resurfaced online, where she talked about her version of the character. She said she's not going to be saved by the Prince and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. While Disney may just be trying to modernize the classic, the comments were causing her to be labeled a fake feminist, with some critics accusing Rachel of gaslighting, and one marketing consultant has warned that that Disney will need to be careful on how they have portrayed Snow White. Snow White has already been suffering from backlash well before Rachel made her comments. Peter Dinklage spoke out about Disney not using dwarf actors for the new film, instead opting to use heavy CGI on Hollywood elites. Rachel's role as Snow White is currently up in the air, because while the film is set to be released in March of next year, the writer's strike may be the exact situation that the studio needs to recast and rewrite its oldest character. Number 6, Liam Neeson. Liam may have spent a long time as a dramatic action star, but his most dramatic moment yet came during an interview published by The Independent. He was promoting his new film, Cold Pursuit, which follows his character seeking retribution after his son is slain. When he was asked how his character turns to anger, he replied by telling them something primal kicks in when someone close to you is a victim of violence. He then shared a true story about a close friend of his admitting to a physical altercation with another man a few years prior. When he heard the news, he said something took over him. When he asked her if she knew what his name was, she said no, but she knew what color his skin was. After using some very offensive language to describe this man, Liam then admitted to spending the next week carrying around a small baton and praying that, quote, a random black man would cross his path. The article began circulating fast, and Liam received a tidal wave of backlash. Since 2019, he has starred in a few films, but nothing as high budget or universally liked as his previous roles. Number 5, Katherine Heigl. Kathy was riding high back in 2007. The former Grey's Anatomy star not only won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Dramatic Series, but she also began transitioning into the big screen with the success of her first feature comedy, Knocked Up, alongside comedy legend Seth Rogen. Unfortunately, her rise to the top quickly became a free fall into a volcano following an ill-fated Vanity Fair interview the following January. In the interview, Katherine made a move that still has people scratching their heads to this day. She openly bashed the film that made her famous, claiming that it painted women as shrew, humorless, and uptight, while also placing blame on Seth for writing the men as lovable, goofy, fun guys. The film still sits at an impressive 89% on Rotten Tomatoes because while she may claim that the project was problematic, the final product was a fun love story filled with some pretty solid jokes, and performances, and a great story. Seth felt betrayed by the comments as they never had a fight on set, and it never seemed like she was uncomfortable at any point. These comments, combined with some negativity towards her Grey's Anatomy writers, caused her agents to drop her as a client, and her time in Hollywood slowly came to a halt. These days she stars in the CBS comedy Our House, but it's looking like she may never return to the big screen. Number 4, Brie Larson. Brie was announced as the newest member of the Marvel Universe in 2019, starring in the film Captain Marvel as the titular superhero. At first, people were pretty excited to see what Marvel would do with this property. Captain Marvel is, after all, one of the original cosmic heroes in comic book canon, and I know I'm a nerd, leave me alone. However, when the movie was actually released, fans were pretty upset with Brie's performance. According to them, she was stale and seemed bored from start to finish. When asked about the online hate at the D23 red carpet in 2022, Brie said she's not sure if she's going to continue to play the character beyond her upcoming Captain Marvel sequel, The Marvels. She's aware of all the hate surrounding her character and defends that role by telling people that's how she was told to play the role. But it's also Brie Larson. She's always been stiff, but that's kind of part of why it's funny. Go watch Scott Pilgrim, you ninnies! Overall, she doesn't sound as terrible as some of the other entries on this list, but the way she has responded to interviewers in the past has pegged her as a Miss Marvel meanie. Number 3, Paula Abdul. In 2012, famous judge and British bad boy Simon Cowell decided to fire his fellow X Factor judge after she went on Fox News and made herself sound just a little bit like a fool. During an interview with Q13, things start out a little rocky thanks to some audio issues causing Paula to hear a station in Texas instead of the one that she was trying to talk to. When they eventually got everything up and running, Paula was just as confusing as she was with the original audio issue. The interviewers were trying to ask her about her visit to Seattle, where Simon claimed that the worst singers he has ever encountered dwell. But instead of defending the city, Paula doubled down and agreed with Simon. But it's not the statement though that landed her in the hot seat, it was the way she was speaking. Paula had always been a little bit animated in her life, using her arms a lot when speaking to people, but she was particularly slurry and she seemed like she was under the influence of something. This was just one of several interviews where Paula was noticeably woozy. Simon's actually claimed that the only reason reason she was invited to host on the X Factor in the first place was to see that if she would bring in the American Idol viewers. When that didn't pan out, he realized that the right move to make was just to let her go and move on to greener pastures. Of course, Paula was mad about this and confronted Simon several times, only digging herself further and further into that hole. Number 2. Tom Cruise. Matt Lauer is not just a terrible man who turned out to be a creepy creepo. He was once a popular talk show host in the early 2000s. During an interview with Tom Cruise in 2005, the topic of his scientific beliefs came up that quickly sent Tom into a rant about psychiatry. Somehow the topic got into Ritalin and pseudosciences. I don't know. Tom yelled at Matt about knowing more than him about psychiatry. Like he had some inside information that he was secretly a therapist or something. The interview came at the height of Tom's very public descent into chaotic badness, becoming very famous for his outlandish beliefs and his wish to push them onto other people. The highlight of the interview came when Cruise was asked about his previous criticism of Brooke Shields taking anti-sad time pills, to which he responded by calling her a glib. And I looked up the definition. That means fluent and voluble, but insecure and shallow. This was only one of several interviews from 2005 that we could discuss today. When he was with Katie Holmes, he was a bit of a nutcase. Just ask Oprah Winfrey. Ever since the mid-2000s, Tom's career has been mainly in the Mission Impossible movies, with only a few small roles to fill the gaps here and there. Not the Hollywood superstar that he was aiming to be. And at number 1, Lance Armstrong. 7-time Tour de France winner Lance Armstrong has gone down in history as a man who was unable to ride a bike without his chemical training wheels. In an interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2013, Lance was brought on to discuss the allegations floating around regarding his status as a Tour de France winner. Several sources claimed that Lance had taken performance-enhancing substances to win each of his races, as well as a type of transfusion involving the red life juice that flows inside all of us. Armstrong went on air and fessed up to every single thing that they were claiming he had done. However, he did deny the notion that he was some kind of a mastermind who would control his teammates and force them to join in his extracurricular activities. But amidst his admission of guilt, say that 10 times fast, there was a moment where he tried to pin the situation on his battle with cancer. He wraps it up by saying that he should have tried harder to cancel the culture rather than create more of a problem. He was stripped of all 7 Tour de France titles, and he has since lived in exile among the cycling world. Number 10. John Mayer. John may be known for spending time with the ladies, but it's not all peaches and cream. The musician was doing an interview with Playboy magazine in 2010, and now I know it involves Playboy, who are notoriously provocative, but even they thought this interview was just a bit too much. John gets into some pretty graphic depictions of things that he wanted to do to Jessica Simpson using language that cannot be repeated online. He then ventures off the physical intimacy side of things and instead begins to speak about his, and I quote, hood pass, claiming that he had become so popular among black people that he could get away with anything he wanted. And then he called it an N-word pass. Following the interview, fans were beyond upset at his behavior and his attitude towards women. Many turned on John, making a massive dent in his career. Nowadays, this is one of the only things John is remembered for. Well, that and Your Body is a Wonderland, because it's a pretty catchy song. Number 9. Paris Hilton. Paris is the originator of the phrase famous for being famous. This woman made headlines many times over the years for a little bit of everything. In 2011, Paris appeared on ABC to discuss her career, personal life, and the recent situations that she had been dealing with involving stalkers. During the interview, she revealed a few things about her life that had previously been speculated, like the fact that she used a higher-pitched baby voice on the show Simple Life, but in real life had a much deeper and more serious tone. But the conversation eventually ventures into uncharted waters. The interviewer asked Paris if she felt that her former friend and protege Kim Kardashian had overshadowed her in the eyes of the media. Paris says nothing, looks to her publicist, and goes to stand up. They almost wrapped the interview entirely, but eventually things simmered down and they were able to clear things up. However, the moment stuck with fans of Hilton immediately and begged the question, why is she so uncomfortable to talk about this, and is it because it's true? Well, it turns out that the world answered that question for her, as Kim's show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, made it big, and Paris Hilton's show was canceled after 1 season. Number 8. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, known for his hilarious personality on and off screen, gave Kat Sadler from E! News and Daily Pop an awkward interview on the red carpet at Harper's Bazaar Party in 2017. The interaction started with Jim slowly circling Kat as she attempts to express her confusion and excitement that Jim Carrey was at a Fashion Week event. Was this man, known for being an incredible artist, bringing his talents to the fashion world? No, he was just in a mood. By 2017, Jim had made a name for himself as an oddly serious guy who tended to venture into the realm of energies and universal concepts when he started getting into deep conversations. He started the conversation with, "This is meaningless," and then he continued to say that he wanted to find the most meaningless thing that he could attend that night. The event was a celebration of icons and celebrities, according to Kat, to which Jim said he did not agree, as in he didn't agree with the concept of icons or celebrities. He continues to give a small speech about not believing that people are actually real and that we're a field of energy and that peace lies beyond personality. Sorry, I'm feeling woozy just talking about it. The entire time this interview is taking place, Kat is visibly uncomfortable, just counting down the moment that Jim says something funny or even remotely related to fashion. Instead, he just shares his thoughts, tells her that she has a nice fragrance, and then he walks away. While Jim's career had already started to slow down at that point, the clip became viral and studios were wondering if he was a good fit for any role anymore. Many scripts with his name on it were then rewritten or simply kept to themselves, right up until 2020 when he made a small comeback in the surprisingly fun movie Sonic the Hedgehog. Number 7. Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin is a very eccentric man, and he's genuinely a really just wonderful performer. Her is a weird dramatic movie that everyone should definitely see at least once. While doing press for a film in 2009, Joaquin was making an appearance on the David Letterman show when David noticed the actor had drastically changed since his last appearance on The Tonight Show. He was wearing sunglasses, he had spawned a big beard and long hair, and it sounded like he was chewing gum the entire time. When David asked Joaquin if he was doing alright, he responded with a muffled, "Yeah, I'm okay," in grand Joaquin fashion. This pattern continued as David goes over his accolades and discusses the announcement Joaquin had made a few weeks prior that he was quitting the acting world forever. It turns out that he was planning to shift his focus into the music world, specifically hip-hop, wishing to be a rapper. Does that make sense? After roughly 10 minutes of screen time, the interview wraps up with sarcasm and a clip from his new film, Two Lovers. Following the interview, many were concerned that Joaquin was maybe under the influence of something, or maybe just he was under anesthesia because he was so quiet and dark and anyway. But it turns out that he was attempting to perform a spoof. According to Joaquin, the entire incident was staged to promote another film that was in the works called I'm Still Here, where the character in the film acts in a very similar manner. Despite the reveal of this being a staged interview, it only made Joaquin look like a wacky whack job. Number 6. Megan Fox. Megan has been featured in several films over the years, but it was an interview about her time working with Michael Bay on the Transformers set that canceled her for good. The original live-action Transformers movie came out in 2007 and co-starred Megan and Shia LaBeouf in the leading roles. Now, it was a fun movie on screen, but behind the scenes there was a ton of tension. According to Megan, who had previously worked with Michael on Bad Boys 2, working with Michael was like working for Schmittler. Fun fact, if you put sh in front of someone's name, you can say it online. Loophole. Of course, Michael didn't appreciate being compared to one of the worst men in human history, so many speculated that her being left out of the third movie may have had something to do with the behind-the-scenes drama. She went on to call him bland and claiming that he had no personality or social skills of any kind, which is just rude. When the comments were made public, her career began to slowly suffer. Not only was she written out of the Transformers series, but she was forced to make a public apology and retracted the statements following the massive slew of backlash. She took a few years off, but Michael himself later acknowledged the missteps on both their parts and not only accepted the retraction, but the pair were able to patch things up and work together on the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. Awesome! Number 5. Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse may not be the busiest bee that he once was, but that's probably because when he's off camera, he's a little stingy with the details. While doing an interview with Romina Puga for her online series Say My Name, Jesse was promoting his new film, Now You See Me. From the moment the camera rolls, Jesse is just obviously annoyed with the situation and with Romina herself. When she refers to Morgan Freeman as Freeman, he asks if she's on like a baseball team with him or something. What's wrong with referring to someone by their last name, huh? Eisenberg continued to poke fun at Romina as she attempted to do some sleight of hand magic, accidentally revealing some scribbles written on her palm. Jesse berates her for being so forgetful that she had to write things down on her hand and then asks her not to refer to Morgan Freeman as Freeman again. When she asks Eisenberg to do a card trick he learned on set, he compared Romina to the comedian Carrot Top, who is universally panned as a terrible comedian. If you're watching this, I'm really sorry, Carrot Top. Also, Carrot Top watches my videos? When the trick is done, Marina doesn't play along, further frustrating Jesse beyond belief. What's funny about this interview is it actually impacted both people involved. While Jesse continues to work, it's in a much smaller capacity, and his hits are few and far between. Meanwhile, Marina received lots of flack for delivering such a bad interview that she eventually stopped doing the show altogether. Number 4. David Letterman. Now, David Letterman has been around for a long time, and while he did eventually get replaced with Stephen Colbert, it was after many years of being extremely odd towards his female guests. There are several examples over the years of David being just a little bit too intimate with his guests, including a time when he would not stop telling Jennifer Aniston how good her legs looked in her dress. He literally told Madonna to go kiss a man in the audience. He called Keira Knightley a lovely offering. He told Dolly Parton that he wanted to see her sweaty. The list goes on. It took way too long for someone to realize that this man was just a bit too open at times, sharing way too much information. One thing he continued to do right up until he retired in 2014 was show revealing or intimate photos of his guests without their knowledge. Like when Emma Watson was forced to explain a wardrobe malfunction after David pulled out a photo from a recent red carpet event. He brushed people's hair, he made dirty jokes, and seriously, this dude was obsessed with legs. In fact, one of the last interviews to ever take place on the show with him was with Jennifer Aniston, and he just sat there complimenting her looks for basically the entire thing. While his career was never destroyed, I thought that it would be worth a mention because this is a list of people who have done some scummy stuff on the air, and David is no exception. Number 3, Robert Pattinson. Now, I will be using the term destroyed loosely here, as this incident did destroy his reputation, but he was eventually able to make a comeback. In 2018, while promoting the Twilight sequel New Moon, Robert made an appearance on the Tyra Banks show alongside his co-star Taylor Lautner. Now, things are going smooth until something takes Tyra over. She tells Robert that she wants him to bite her right on the neck, like a vampire. Well, Rob hesitates for about 3 seconds and then chomps down on Tyra for a moment. The clip is lighthearted and Tyra is fueled with joy, but according to members of the production team, Summit Entertainment was not happy. Robert was scalded by the director and his team of agents who had not given Robert the green light to bite a woman's neck on television even if she literally asked him to do it. This caused a lot of personal issues for the people on the Twilight team, as they wanted their film to be seen as a serious dramatic piece, yet Robert was playing vampire for fun with Tyra Banks. As I said, this interview did impact his career, but in a different way. As the Twilight movies continued, Robert was offered small roles here and there, but thanks to this interview with Tyra, he was no longer some young-faced actor the studio could just manipulate. He was Robert. His career eventually picked up outside of the young adult book world, and he is now a very bankable man in Hollywood. Number 2, Katherine Heigl. Kathy was riding high back in 2007. The former Grey's Anatomy star not only won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Dramatic Series, but she also began transitioning into the big screen with the success of her first feature comedy, Knocked Up, alongside comedy legend Seth Rogen. Unfortunately, her rise to the tippy top quickly became a free fall into a volcano, following an ill-fated Vanity Fair interview in 2008. In the interview, Katherine made a move that still has people scratching their heads to this day. She openly bashed the film that made her famous, claiming that it painted women as shrew, humorless, and uptight, while also placing blame on Seth Rogen for writing the men as lovable, goofy, and fun. The film still sits at an impressive 89% on Rotten Tomatoes because while she may claim that the project was problematic, the final product was actually a really fun love story filled with some solid jokes, performances, and a great story at its core. Seth felt betrayed by the comments as they never had a fight on set, and it never seemed like she was uncomfortable at any point. These comments, combined with some negativity towards her Grey's Anatomy writers, caused her agents to drop her as a client, and her time in Hollywood quickly came to a screeching halt. And at number 1, Kanye West. Kanye was slowly going mad in the eyes of the public way back in 2010. As the years went by, he made more and more appearances on TV, but it wasn't until 2018 where his political beliefs got him heated on Jimmy Kimmel Live. When Jimmy asked Kanye how he felt about the response to his decree that he was all for President at the time Donald Trump, he was largely criticized. He defends his statements by claiming that he did not have to conform to some united mindset and that he was a little bit upset at the backlash, but that a part of him kind of enjoyed the hate. He then suggested that the world world was in a simulation, claiming that it's filled with unpaid actors. The over 20-minute interview is filled with metaphors, the concept of love, and a comparison of himself to the Son of God. This interview was only a short time after his anti-Semitic tweets were circulating the internet. Ye even makes a joke about the anxiety of asking his publicist to appear on the show. He was fairly calm in his delivery of his opinions, but he made sure his opinions were known.